4 months and 10 days. That is how long Nancy Guthrie has been missing. 130 days since the pacemaker went silent at 2:28 in the morning. 130 days since the masked figure left her home with the woman who tended flower pots on her back patio. 130 days since Savannah Guthrie walked onto the Today set and showed the country what it looks like to keep going when the world has fallen apart. No named suspect. No arrest. No confirmed second crime scene. No body. And this week, 3 developments that together describe exactly where this investigation stands and why the public narrative of a case gone cold does not match what the journalists and investigators who are closest to the evidence are actually saying. The first is Brian Entin's positive theory. The journalist who has covered this case every single day since February, who has the best sourcing on the investigation of anyone in the public domain, who said in May that his sources told him the investigation was not much closer, went on record this week with something different, a positive take, a theory about the case that, according to Men's Journal, constitutes good news. The second is the debunking of the private investigator story. Entin confirmed on June 9th that Savannah Guthrie did not hire private investigators, did not spend $500,000. The story that circulated widely and was covered by multiple outlets, the story of a daughter who had lost faith in the official investigation and was supplementing it with her own team, was wrong. Entin said it plainly. It is just the Pima County Sheriff's Office and the FBI that are investigating this case right now. And then he said the thing that matters most. It seems she still has confidence in the FBI and the local detectives who are investigating. The third is the no-body prosecution assessment from Tad DiBiase. The former federal prosecutor who wrote the definitive guide on no-body homicide cases said this week that the Nancy Guthrie case could be successfully tried without her body being recovered, that a suspect could be found guilty, that the case is prosecutable on the evidence that already exists. This is forensic disconnect, day 130. And today we are going to hold all 3 of these developments against each other, and against the full picture of what the investigation actually has, to assess where this case stands at the 4-month mark. Before we go further, subscribe and hit the notification bell. Day 130. Subscribe. Let's start with Entin's positive theory, because the specific nature of what Entin is saying, or not yet saying publicly in full, tells you something important about the investigative landscape right now. Entin has been the most credible public voice on this case since February. Not because he is always optimistic. He was the one who said in May that his sources told him the investigation was not much closer. Not because he always has good news. He broke the show characterization, the scolding of the county assessor, the board not acting. He has consistently reported what his sources tell him, whether it is positive or negative, and his sourcing has consistently proven more accurate than the official communications. When Brian Entin says he has a positive theory about the Nancy Guthrie case, when the journalist whose sourcing has been the most reliable public indicator of where this investigation actually is, characterizes his current assessment as positive, that is different from a casual commentator expressing hope. It is the specific assessment of a person with genuine investigative sourcing saying that what he is hearing from inside the investigation is something other than the stagnation narrative that the public record suggests. What is the positive theory? The full details have not been publicly disclosed. What has been confirmed is that Entin has a theory and characterizes it as positive. In the context of everything we know about this investigation, the DNA at Quantico, the blockchain analysis, the genealogy process at Astria, the 50,000 tips, the enhanced images that Coffindaffer says exist, the positive theory is almost certainly connected to one or more of those forensic processes, producing results that have not yet been publicly disclosed. The DNA at Quantico. Nano said in May that results could be coming soon. Entin has sourcing on the state of the DNA analysis. A positive theory, in the context of a case where the forensic path to identification runs through the DNA, is most likely connected to the DNA producing something, a profile, a partial match, a result that is moving the genealogy process forward. The blockchain. The FBI's blockchain analytics team has been following the Bitcoin wallet created for the ransom demand since February. A positive theory connected to the blockchain would mean the trail is getting close to an identity, close enough that Entin's sources are characterizing the state of the analysis as positive. The 50,000 tips. Former Pima County Detective Robbie Mayer said he believes the suspect's name is already in those 50,000 tips. A positive theory connected to the tip processing would mean the investigation has identified a specific lead that is being actively pursued. A tip that, when connected to the behavioral profile, has produced a name that investigators are working to confirm through the forensic evidence. The specific content of Entin's positive theory matters. It will eventually be disclosed, either because the investigation reaches a public milestone or because Entin reports it on his show. Until it is disclosed, the fact that the journalist with the best sourcing in this case is characterizing his assessment as positive is itself the news. Now let's go to the private investigator debunking. Because the specific correction that Entin made on June 9th is more significant than a simple factual clarification. The original story, that Savannah Guthrie had hired a team of former federal agents and security specialists, that she had spent $500,000, that she had concluded the official investigation was insufficient and was supplementing it with her own resources, was reported by Rob Shooter's Naughty But Nice Substack and picked up by multiple outlets. It produced significant coverage. It fit a narrative that many people following this case found plausible given the 130 days of official investigation without a named suspect. Entin went on his show on June 9th and corrected it. He said he confirmed that it is not true. Savannah did not hire private investigators, did not spend $500,000. The Pima County Sheriff's Office and the FBI are the only investigators working this case. That correction matters for two reasons. The first is simple factual accuracy. The story was wrong. Entin has the sourcing to know it was wrong. He corrected it. The second is what the correction reveals about Savannah's current posture. Entin did not just say the story was wrong. He said it seems she still has confidence in the FBI and the local detectives who are investigating. That specific characterization, confidence in the FBI and the local detectives, is the investigative posture of someone who is being told, through whatever communication channel she has with the investigation, that things are moving. That the positive theory Entin has is the kind of development that keeps a daughter's confidence in the process intact. A daughter who had genuinely lost faith in the investigation would not have confidence in the FBI and the local detectives. She might hire private investigators. She might make public statements criticizing the official process. She might take the kinds of unilateral actions that the original private investigator story described. She is not doing those things. She posted on Instagram this weekend, "Bring her home, whoever took her." She is sustaining the public presence that has kept this case in the national news cycle for 130 days. She appears, according to Entin's sourcing, to have confidence in the investigation. That confidence, from the daughter who is closest to the case and who has access to information through her communication with the FBI that the public does not have, is itself a data point about where the investigation stands. Now let's go to Tad DiBiase's assessment. Because the former federal prosecutor who wrote No Body Homicide Cases, a practical guide to investigating, prosecuting, and winning cases. When the victim is missing said something specific this week that deserves to be understood in its full legal context. He said the Nancy Guthrie case could be tried successfully as a no-body case. That a suspect could be found guilty without Nancy's body being recovered. And he said, it is always better to have a body without a doubt. But the case is prosecutable. He also said something that connects directly to the ongoing search efforts and the specific investigative posture of the case. He said there are two reasons why it is problematic not to search for Nancy's body. One is because you overlook the opportunity to find the body, which is critical. But two, and this is the prosecutorial dimension, when you go to trial, you want to be able to say to the jury, here are all the searches we did, and we confirmed that there is no way she walked away on her own. There is no way she escaped. There is no way she committed suicide. Because unless you have done a very thorough search, you are leaving open the possibility of other defenses. That specific statement, the prosecutorial logic of conducting comprehensive searches even in the absence of a recovery, connects the ongoing search efforts in the Sonoran Desert to the specific evidentiary requirements of a future prosecution. The searches are not just for closure, they are for the courtroom. Every area that is comprehensively searched and found to contain no evidence of Nancy's voluntary departure is one less defense argument available to the eventual defendant. The Catalyst Center with ground-penetrating technology. The Madres Buscadoras de Sonora south of the border. The YouTube content creators walking through the desert terrain. Every search that confirms Nancy was not in a specific location is a search that the prosecution can cite as evidence that she did not leave voluntarily. DiBiase also said something about the role of federal prosecutors in this investigation that has not been widely noted. He said federal and state prosecutors are involved because kidnapping is a federal offense, and that is the hook. The federal prosecution hook is kidnapping, not murder, not ransom extortion, but the specific federal crime of kidnapping that gives federal prosecutors jurisdiction over this case, regardless of what eventually happens to Nancy or the suspect. The kidnapping statutes allow federal prosecution. The federal prosecutors are already involved. The DNA evidence is at the FBI laboratory at Quantico. The blockchain analysis is being conducted by FBI forensic analysts. The case is already federal in its investigative posture. DiBiase is saying that the prosecution will also be federal, and that the federal prosecution framework is robust enough to take this case to trial without a body if the other evidence is sufficient. Now let's talk about the Coral Michelle Smith case. Because the announcement from the Pima County Sheriff's Department about a woman wanted in connection with a kidnapping and assault approximately 7 miles from Nancy's home is the kind of development that, in a different case, would be the headline story of the week. The PCSD announced that Coral Michelle Smith is wanted in connection with a kidnapping and aggravated assault with a deadly weapon that occurred on May 29th in the Catalina foothills, 7 miles from Nancy's home. The Catalina foothills, the same neighborhood, the same geographic context, the same area that investigators have been focused on since February. The department has been careful to say that they currently believe there is no connection between the Smith case and the Nancy Guthrie case. That specific disclaimer, currently believe there is no connection, is the language of law enforcement that has not yet established a connection but has not ruled one out. What do we know about the Smith case? She is wanted for a kidnapping and aggravated assault with a deadly weapon. The incident occurred on May 29th, 118 days after Nancy disappeared. It occurred in the Catalina foothills, 7 miles from Nancy's home, and the PCSD has a wanted poster for her that it issued as part of its communication to the public. The specific relevance to the Nancy investigation is not the Smith case itself. It is the geographic and behavioral context it provides. The Catalina foothills is not a neighborhood known for violent crime. It is a residential area in the foothills north of Tucson, home to retired professionals and long-term residents like Nancy Guthrie. A kidnapping and armed assault in that neighborhood on May 29th, regardless of whether it is connected to Nancy, reflects something about the specific criminal landscape of the area. And the PCSD's caveat, currently believe there is no connection, leaves open the possibility that the investigation is still evaluating whether Smith or her associates have any connection to the Nancy Guthrie case, not confirming a connection, not ruling it out, currently. Now let's also address the streamers, because the PCSD's announcement that it has been issuing citations and making arrests for public nuisance near Nancy's home is itself a reflection of the specific cultural phenomenon that this case has produced. People are driving to Tucson. They are setting up near Nancy's property. They are live streaming. One of them was caught on video urinating in public behind a makeshift tent. The PCSD has responded with increased patrols, no trespassing signs, and now citations and arrests. This is what happens when a case reaches the level of cultural saturation that this one has reached. The true crime content ecosystem, YouTube channels, TikTok creators, live streamers, gravitates toward active investigations in ways that are not always beneficial to those investigations or to the dignity of the people involved. Nancy Guthrie is not a content opportunity. She is a real person. An 84-year-old woman with a family who is still living inside the specific horror of 130 days of not knowing. The streamers who are urinating behind makeshift tents near her home are not covering this case. They are exploiting it. The PCSD's response, citations, arrests, increased patrols, is appropriate. The dignity of the investigation and the dignity of the family require it. But the streamer phenomenon is also a reflection of something real, This case matters to millions of people. The public engagement, however it sometimes manifests, is part of why the investigation has received the sustained national attention and the $1.2 million reward and the ongoing coverage that keeps it in the public consciousness. The line between genuine public engagement and exploitation is real and matters. The PCSD is enforcing it. Day 130. Entin has a positive theory. Savannah has confidence in the FBI. DiBiase says the case is prosecutable without a body. The DNA is at Quantico. The blockchain is being traced. The genealogy process is active. The 50,000 tips are being worked. The enhanced images exist. And Nancy Guthrie, 84 years old, 5 feet tall, silver hair and blue eyes, has been missing for 130 days. The investigation is still building. The processes are still running. And the journalist with the best sourcing in this case says his current assessment is positive. That is not nothing. Let me go deeper into what Tad DiBiase's specific assessment means for the prosecutorial path of this case. Because he is not just a commentator offering an opinion. He is the author of the definitive legal guide on exactly this type of prosecution. And his specific observations about the Guthrie investigation are the assessments of someone who has won these cases. DiBiase wrote, "No Body Homicide Cases. A Practical Guide to Investigating, Prosecuting, and Winning Cases, when the Victim is Missing." The book is used by prosecutors and investigators nationally as the standard reference for building and trying cases where the victim's remains have not been found. When DiBiase says a case is prosecutable without a body, he is speaking from the specific expertise of someone who has prosecuted these cases successfully and who has documented the methodology that makes them winnable. His specific observation about the Nancy Guthrie investigation, that federal and state prosecutors are involved because kidnapping is a federal offense, and that's the hook, is the prosecutorial framework observation that explains why this case will eventually reach a federal courtroom, regardless of whether Nancy is found. The federal kidnapping statute, 18 U.S.C. Section 1201, provides federal jurisdiction over kidnapping cases where the victim is transported across state lines or where the kidnapping involves interstate commerce. The specific application to the Nancy Guthrie case turns on the ransom demands, the Bitcoin wallet, the notes sent to television stations, the digital communication infrastructure used to demand ransom. Ransom demands in a kidnapping invoke the specific federal jurisdiction that gives the FBI and federal prosecutors the authority to investigate and prosecute. The kidnapping is the hook, and once the federal hook is established, the prosecution can proceed regardless of what happens to Nancy physically. The kidnapping occurred. It is documented. The evidence of it is specific and forensic. The masked figure at the door, the blood on the front stoop, the pacemaker going silent, the ransom notes, the Bitcoin wallet. You do not need Nancy's body to prove the kidnapping. You need the evidence of what happened at her home, and that evidence exists. The murder charge, if one is eventually filed, would be added based on the evidence that Nancy did not survive. The presumption of death in the absence of contact for a specific period of time, combined with the forensic evidence of what happened at her home, the behavioral evidence of the perpetrator, and the results of the DNA and blockchain analysis, is the foundation of the murder charge. But the kidnapping is prosecutable right now. With the evidence that already exists, without a body, without a named suspect, once the DNA or the blockchain or the tip produces the name. The name is the threshold. Once the name is established, the kidnapping prosecution can proceed. And in the context of the investigation that has been running for 130 days, with DNA at Quantico, with the blockchain being traced, with 50,000 tips, with Entin's positive theory, the name is somewhere in the evidence, waiting for the forensic convergence that produces it. DiBiase said the case could be tried successfully without a body. He also said the searches are important for the courtroom, not just for finding Nancy, but for eliminating the defense arguments that an unsearched landscape leaves open. The prosecution needs to be able to say to a jury, "We searched everywhere she could plausibly be. We found no evidence that she left voluntarily. We found no evidence of suicide. We found no evidence of accidental death. What we found was a forensic record of a violent abduction and the evidence trail of who committed it." That prosecutorial picture is what the 130 days of investigation has been building. The searches are part of it. The DNA is part of it. The blockchain is part of it. The genealogy is part of it. And the positive theory that Entin is not yet fully disclosing is almost certainly the piece that the convergence of all of those elements is approaching. Now let me go deeper into what Savannah Guthrie's confidence in the investigation means as a signal of the investigation's actual state. Because the correction of the private investigator story is not just a factual clarification, it is a specific piece of evidence about where Savannah is and what she knows. Savannah has direct communication with the FBI through whatever family liaison channel has been established. She has direct communication with the investigation through the personal contact that Nanos has preserved, the texting, the occasional phone call.
She has access through those channels to information about the state of the investigation that the public does not have. A daughter who had genuinely concluded that the investigation was going nowhere would not maintain public confidence in it. She would either express public frustration, as she did carefully in March when she said the investigation had some challenges early on, or she would take unilateral action, as the private investigator story suggested. She is not doing either.
She is posting on Instagram asking for her mother to be brought home. She is going to work every morning in yellow. She is sustaining the public presence that has kept this case alive for 130 days. And Entin, who has the sourcing to distinguish between confidence that is publicly performed and confidence that is privately real, says it seems she still has confidence in the FBI and the local detectives. That specific word, seems, is Entin being careful. He is not saying Savannah has told him she has full confidence. He is saying that from what he can observe and from what his sources tell him, the picture is one of ongoing confidence rather than the disillusionment that the private investigator story suggested. In the context of 130 days without a named suspect, ongoing confidence in the investigation from the person closest to the case is a specific data point. It suggests that Savannah is being told something, or observing something, that gives her reason to believe the process is working, even if the public cannot yet see the results. Entin's positive theory may be the same thing Savannah is seeing. A forensic development that has not yet reached the stage of public disclosure, but that is specific enough to produce confidence in someone who is close enough to the investigation to understand what it means. Now let me also go deeper into what the no-body prosecution framework means for the specific evidence categories in this case. Because DiBiase's assessment that the case is prosecutable is grounded in specific evidentiary logic that applies to what the investigation has. The three elements of a no-body murder prosecution are: the victim is dead, the death was criminal, and the defendant is responsible. Each of these elements can be established through circumstantial evidence in the absence of remains. The victim is dead. Nancy Guthrie has been missing for 130 days. She has not used any financial accounts. She has not communicated with her family. She has not been seen. Her pacemaker has been silent since 2:28 a.m. on February 1st. The ransom operation that the perpetrator designed produced no proof of life and no sustained engagement. The forensic expert Barbara Butcher assessed it as likely that Nancy died shortly after being taken. The specific combination of a violent abduction, an 84-year-old woman with a cardiac condition, and 130 days of complete silence is the specific evidentiary picture that establishes death in the absence of a body. The death was criminal. The evidence at the scene, the blood on the front stoop, the masked armed figure at 1:47 a.m., the propped open back doors, the pacemaker going silent 41 minutes after the last camera coverage, the phone and purse and keys and shoes and medication all left behind, establishes that whatever happened to Nancy was not voluntary, was not accidental, and was not natural. It was criminal. Done to her. By someone who was physically present at her home that night. The defendant is responsible. Once the name is established, through the DNA, the blockchain, the genealogy, the tips, the evidence connecting the name to the scene is the forensic work that has been running for 130 days. The enhanced images, the prior surveillance visit, the behavioral evidence of the crime, the specific physical evidence at the scene that the unknown contributor at Quantico left there. All three elements are being built simultaneously. The investigation has 130 days of evidence. The prosecution has DiBiase's framework, and the name is the threshold. When the name arrives, in a second, as Entin said in May, the prosecutorial path from identification to charges to trial is the path that DiBiase has documented in his book and that federal prosecutors have followed in dozens of nobody cases. The case is prosecutable. Entin has a positive theory. Savannah has confidence in the FBI. The DNA is at Quantico. The blockchain is being traced. Day 130. The investigation continues. If you have any information about Nancy Guthrie's disappearance, contact the FBI at 1-800-CALL-FBI, 1-800-225-5324. Submit tips at tips.fbi.gov. Call the Pima County Sheriff's Department at 520-351-4900. The combined reward is over $1.2 million. Completely anonymous. We will be back tomorrow.